Welcome back. Well, NDIS Minister Bill Shorten has admitted problems with unscrupulous service providers within the scheme are worse than previously thought. A Senate estimates hearing revealed billions of dollars in the NDIS funds are being rorted. The National Disability Insurance Agency's head of fraud and integrity, John Dardo, says up to 90% of operators have committed fraud, some using the taxpayer dollars to buy drugs, alcohol and even cars. The minister argues the scheme has never been perfect and says rorting was rife under the previous government.
Some people just want to talk about the problems and never the successes. The truth is, it's doing well, but it needs to have more consistency, equity, transparency and accountability. The fact that we're uncovering some of the rorts is not because they've all started, last week. They've been there and no one's addressed them. Now we are addressing them, but we've got to do due process. The truth of the matter is that if we listen to people with disability, if we focus on the best outcomes for the support packages we give them, we'll get there. But what we also need to do is not be naive about the underbelly of a minority of providers manipulating participants.
Joining the panel now, Liberal Senator Maria Kovacic, who was on this Senate Estimates Committee, delving into all of this. Thanks for your time. So, look, obviously some pretty troubling and headline-grabbing stuff. The minister says, well, look, we're actually looking into this and doing something about it. That's more of it. That's why a lot of it is coming out. Was part of that in this committee hearing? Did that emerge? Would you agree with that?
Look, thank you for having me. And that is the minister's message. But ultimately, our purpose was to uncover the issues that are prevalent within the NDIS, the scheme itself. And, what we heard, from, one of the most senior executives was really, really shocking and really, really troubling, particularly around how providers are exploiting the system, providers who don't have the best interests of participants at heart, who are impacting participants who do need the services and absolutely, literally rely on them for their lives, and then, impact good providers as well. It's unacceptable.
Is there a sense, though, I mean, would you agree broadly that this program's had a lot of issues around this for a lot of years and Bill Shorten is trying to fix it?
I believe that the minister would like us to think that, perhaps he's doing a lot more than what seems to be happening on the ground. What we can see is that we have had an influx of issues and an influx of complaints across the board, and that's what drove us to ask these questions at Estimates. I mean, these questions weren't historically asked at Estimates in the last government, so I think you can sort of work that out yourselves.
Do you feel that there are some positives as well? I know that your job is to scrutinise and put the blowtorch on the waste, and there's no shortage of that, and you had a couple of enormous political hits as well. But were there positives that you saw? The minister says we're not focusing enough on the enormous reform and positives out of that department.
Yeah, I think, political hits are one thing. I think what's really important to understand here is that we're trying to get answers to understand how to fix this problem. And we need to fix it because there are people that absolutely need this service, these services under the scheme. But it cannot continue to be exploited the way that it is. So we need to separate the participants who need the services away from providers who are exploiting not only participants but the taxpayer as well.
Have you got any sense of the nature of the at times criminal behaviour, but the exploitation from providers that just don't have the best interests of those individuals at heart?
Yeah, look, Mr Dardo gave evidence which was quite shocking. I asked him a question about drug trafficking, and he gave us an example of, participants being taken to an ATM by their provider, being forced to take out cash to hand over for illicit drugs. I mean, that's extraordinary. If you can imagine that people are participating in this scheme to be protected, and the very scheme that's meant to protect them is being manipulated by somebody to harm them, that is what we have to stop. And we all need to work together in order to do that. So there's...
Absolutely.
that is the purpose of the committee, that is the purpose of the estimates, is to actually find answers so we can create better outcomes.
Housing is one of the big issues facing Australians. You used your first speech to call for tax changes to boost home ownership, including capping the number of properties that one can negatively gear. That position kind of puts you at odds with Peter Dutton. Do you think it's a mistake for the coalition to weaponise this issue of negative gearing against Labor?
Look, I don't think we are weaponising it, and these are policy discussions, and it's important to talk about things. And the job of a backbencher, whether you're in the House or in the Senate, is to bring up concepts and ideas. So I think that's the number one thing. And I think what we need to focus on, and what I spoke about in my first speech, was that it's not okay that young Australians today think no matter how hard they work, no matter what they do, that they will never be able to own their own home. For me, that is unacceptable. That's unacceptable for all of us in the Liberal and the Coalition Party rooms, because aspiration is at the core of what we believe in. We're here to have opportunity and create something bigger, you know, and it's my own story. It's the migrant story of my family, and it's the story of most Australians, and young Australians should be able to hope for that.
There was an issue with the women's vote for the Liberals in New South Wales last time. I think you stood for Parramatta against Andrew Charlton and
I did a pretty good job too.
Yeah, but you didn't get there. We had him on earlier. Do you think you can get that seat back? Have you pre-selected enough female candidates, or is it a hard slog, that seat?
So our candidate in Parramatta is Katie Mullins. She's a local lawyer who has been working her guts out literally for a number of months already, and every seat is going to be hard for both parties.
Doesn't David Elliott want the seat? If there's a redistribution, it could open up. Could you see that happening?
No, you'd have to get David on and ask him. I might join the panel too. I'm interested to find out.
Would that be a bad look? That'd be a bad look, though, as I said, Josh Frydenberg was with Amelia Hamer, right?
Look, I think what you have to do is consider a number of things, particularly with redistributions, is how does the seat change? And does that impact, you know, what's already in place in terms of candidates, and whether those changes are minor or significant? You know, Amelia Hamer is an excellent candidate. She also is, you know, working so hard. And if anyone should be worried in that scenario, it's Monique Ryan, because, you know, I think she's doing, you know, Amelia is doing an excellent job. So I think we need to sort of have some balance around it. And like everybody, I'm waiting to see what the Electoral Commission will bring out next Friday, I think it is now, so that we can all have some clarity and move forward.
Your call on negative gearing, any chance that ends up as part of coalition policy?
I don't know. But you know what I think is really important?
It's still being formulated, though. Yeah. You must have put it out there. Are you getting any positive response?
I think what's really good is that we're talking about everything in relation to housing. We actually acknowledge that, you know, there is a lot of levers here that we need to work with. Right. And I think it's part of a broader tax reform package as well, which includes addressing bracket creep, which is a massive problem.
So you think
as well.
It's on the table?
I think it's part of a conversation, but it's not on, you know, you'd have to speak to someone in Cabinet in relation to what's on the table there. I'm a backbencher and free to speak.
Influential one speaking out. Don't talk yourself down. All right, Senator, appreciate your time today.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.